I have a very good relationship with President Xi of China. We're having disputes on things. They're paying us a lot of money, tremendous amount of money in tariffs, and they'd probably like to have it be less, and we'll work on that, but they have to give us some things too. I want them to buy soybeans. One of the things I want is China's going to buy soybeans. I want China to stop with the fentanyl. Very, normal things. I don't want them to play the rare earth game with us.
President Trump on Air Force One last night on his goals for the China-U.S. trade relations. The president will meet with Xi Jinping in South Korea on October 31st, coming up, end of this month. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, meanwhile, will hold talks with his Chinese counterparts in Malaysia later this week after speaking with Beijing's vice premier on Friday. China's economy reportedly growing 4.8% in the third quarter. That would be the weakest GDP growth in a year. A lot slower than many people expect. The president also told me that a 157% tariff on China is unsustainable. He discussed with me his plans for this upcoming meeting. Watch.
On China, you've got a lot of economic levers to pull. You've got all those Chinese companies trading on our exchanges.
I have a lot to pull. I'm not looking to destroy China. I'm not looking to destroy China. But China's taken out hundreds of trillions of dollars, not hundreds, over the years, trillions of dollars. China has built their military because of us. China has taken out trillions and trillions of dollars. And then I came along my first term, as you know, I took out hundreds of billions of dollars from China. I tariffed China. And Biden left them, except he made so many exceptions it didn't matter. But I tariffed China. I took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China. And now they forced me to charge them what is the equivalent of 155 to 157%.
But they need our capital markets. I mean, we're funding the expansion of these companies tied to the military.
I think they do. But look, they have a very smart leader. And I think we have a leader that wants to make a deal because I think that's smart. And he's smart. So we'll see what happens. I'm meeting with him in 2 weeks. We're going to see what happens.
Joining me now is the Gatestone Institute Senior Fellow, Gordon Chang. Gordon, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. What do you want to see at this meeting? And then when I spoke with you last week, you mentioned the plenum, which is happening this week in China. Explain that and give us your expectations.
Yeah, just a few hours ago, the Communist Party Central Committee started its fourth plenum, which is scheduled to run for 4 days. In other words, ending on Thursday. They're going to look at measures to stimulate the economy. That print of GDP for Q3 was not good, but really what was terrible was fixed asset investment falling 0.5%. They'll also, I think, outline some of the 15th five-year plan, which covers the half decade starting next year. And everybody is looking at the issue of leadership changes. On Friday, there was the extraordinary announcement from China's defense ministry that 9 senior military officers had been investigated and had been removed, including Xi Jinping's #1 loyalist in the military, General He Weidong, who was going to be expelled from the party. This is just unprecedented. We don't know where this is going. Xi Jinping could be removed or he could emerge stronger. But in any case, there's going to be a lot of turmoil in the party because people are going to be purged after Thursday, however this goes.
That's amazing. So this could be this week and the quote-unquote plenum underway in China. This could be something of a referendum on Xi Jinping's power.
Yes, and that's a really good way to put it, Maria, because really what we have is Xi Jinping, especially over the last 3 or 4 years after COVID, is being blamed for accelerating a lot of China's ills. And there's unhappiness throughout society, throughout the Communist Party, and evidently throughout the Chinese military. Now, what would be more extraordinary than Xi Jinping being deposed? That would be Xi Jinping remaining after this record of failure. So this is going to be fascinating, however it comes out. And really right now, I think that Xi Jinping is going to be weakened in some way. Maybe not deposed, but certainly weakened because his record has not been good for China and people can see it.
Yeah, and of course, he's already been weakened since we started talking about this a couple of years ago. Look, he hasn't done a very good job with President Trump because he forced the president to put on this additional 100% tariff, stacking on top of the others. But markets reversed course entirely on Friday after we released the soundbite of President Trump telling me that the 157% tariff, the total tariff on China, is not sustainable. Watch this.
I raised our tariffs to 100% on top of what they're already paying, which is far worse, far worse. We'll see what happens with China. I've always had a great relationship with them, as you know, but they're always looking for an edge.
If you put that 100% tariff on top of what's in place already, you've got a 157% tariff on
right.
China. Can that stand?
No,
I mean, what is that going to do to the economy?
It's not sustainable, but that's what the number is. It's probably not, it could stand, but they forced me to do that. I think we're going to do fine with China. I get along great with him. He's a very strong leader, a very, amazing man. I think we're going to be fine with China, but we have to have a fair deal. It's got to be fair. And you cover it as well as anybody that's ever covered this subject.
Gordon, what's your reaction to the president saying 157% tariff is not sustainable, but he's expecting things to go okay?
Well, it's certainly not sustainable for China because China has never been more trade dependent in its history. Last year, it ran a $992.2 billion trade surplus. Yeah. That surplus could be larger this year, but that's really just the extent of it. We're seeing that because Chinese goods are being shut out of the U.S. market. Yes, China can export to the global south, but the margins on what it's exporting to the rest of the world are vastly diminished, which means that Chinese exporters are having a hard time, especially the smaller ones. Yeah. So, for China, they've got a lot at stake at this.
Well, how significant is the Ministry of Commerce announcement out of China that they are implementing these export controls on rare earth minerals and the refining of those minerals, Gordon?
Well, they're certainly hurting our economy, and they are shaking the world because they're not directed just against the U.S. They're directed against everybody. That's right. And so this really creates common cause for countries against China.
All right, Gordon, we'll be watching this plenum sessions in China and, of course, trying to get more information ahead of these trips. Besant going to Malaysia, President Trump going to South Korea. Gordon, thank you. We'll see you soon. Gordon Chang, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Finally, this. Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley releasing a memo which shows the Department of Justice under then Attorney General Merrick Garland unleashed unchecked government power on associates of President Trump. Grassley posted this on X. Just received this doc from DOJ, proof that Biden Attorney General Merrick Garland plus Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco plus FBI Director Chris Wray all personally approved opening Arctic frost. This investigation unleashed unchecked government power at the highest levels. My oversight's going to continue. This document you're seeing here, Maria, it's from April of 2022. It authorized the FBI's D.C. field office to open a probe into whether or not individuals connected to Trump's 2020 campaign conspired to obstruct the certification of the election, January 6, 2020. But this all led to what we know now, and that's that Special Counsel Jack Smith surveilled the phones of 8 Republican senators and 1 House member. Now, Smith yesterday asked House and Senate Judiciary Committees that his testimony be public. His lawyers reaching out to Mr. Jordan, Mr. Grassley. That happened yesterday afternoon, Maria.
Well, I'm not surprised that was the crew that was running things and directing Arctic frost, Chris, directing our most important law enforcement agencies to turn the tables and track their Republican political opponents.
Yeah, obviously this is bad. This is just the unchecked power is exactly what Chuck Grassley needs to be focused on here. But I will say I'm not sure about the political strategy here. We don't need to be thinking about January 6th. We need to be talking about the Schumer shutdown. We need to be talking about how poorly Democrats are governing these big cities like with J.B. Pritzker. Those are the things we need to be focused on. And I'm worried that we need a lot of power at DOJ for the administration to go after some of these folks. So I'm really worried that we're going to miss out on opportunities to crack down on the bad guys.
I mean, look, John, I don't know how much Joe Biden knew. We all know he had mental capacity issues. Was it the Democrats driving this? Was it, Lisa Monaco and Merrick Garland really just wanting to turn the tables on the Republicans? Or was it coming from Joe Biden? We don't know.
We don't really know, but, the fact of the matter is that justice should not have been doing this in the first place. This should not have been taking place. It was a waste of taxpayer money. There are other types of activity that perhaps they should have been following more closely. Look at all the while this is going on. We had millions of illegal border crossings in the United States, and that's breaking the law on a very grand scale. And how about the crime that we had in various cities that they didn't care about? How about all the people dying of fentanyl coming from China and whatnot? Where were they?
And that's the point that I always make, Cheryl. It's not just about what they did to their political opponents, but it's what they did not do for the American people. It's a dereliction of duty to allow all those illegals to come in and also blow off what was going on China. Because China right now is eating our lunch when it comes to all of these things that we need so much: rare earth minerals, pharmaceuticals, chips, etc. How come that they were yelling Russia, 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 and tracking Republican senators when they weren't ensuring that we had everything we needed here so that we weren't reliant on communist China?
All of those policies, all of those decisions under the Biden administration, Maria, came to fruition in November of 2024. And that is why right now the White House, the Senate, Congress, and, of course, everything is controlled by the Republicans. That's why. End of story. So they have no one to blame but themselves.
Well, not everything. They need 60 votes to get the government opened again, Cheryl. We're watching that.
By the way, President Trump is speaking right now at the Rose Garden, where he's hosting a luncheon with Senate Republicans. We're going to monitor that and bring you any headlines that come out of it. But meanwhile, anyone who thought Democrats would end the government shutdown right after their No Kings protests were wrong. It drags on. This is day 21. Already, it is the third longest in U.S. history. House Speaker Mike Johnson calling out Democrats, saying they're being held back from their far left of their party. Listen.
Real Americans are hurting, and it is so frustrating to us, Cheryl, because the contrast here is so clear. The Democrats voted it down. They've done it now almost a dozen times, as you said, because they're playing partisan games. They filed a counterproposal. Let's not let anybody forget what they filed as their counter offer. Their CR is not a clean one, it's a dirty one, because they want to spend $1.5 trillion new dollars on all sorts of wasteful programs, including $200 billion to fund health care benefits on the backs of American taxpayers for illegal aliens.
Democrats blocked the GOP funding bill for a 12th time last night. Liz, I'm just wondering if Democrats continue to believe that they're not being stuck with this shutdown at all, and it's going to be a big boost for them leading into the midterms. Do you think that? And by the way, you've got some late news on Fetterman as well.
Yeah, Fetterman's calling for the GOP to start to nuke the filibuster and force a vote basically on this. I think what's interesting, David, if you look at the polling week by week, Democrats have lost ground. They're still held accountable by fewer Americans than the GOP. I think I'm saying that backwards. GOP is blamed by more Americans than is the Democrats right now, but it's like by 6 points. It was 10 last week, and I think Democrats are seeing the end of this game. It's not working for them anymore. I think that actually the messaging from Republicans about the illegal health care, I think that's kind of resonated.
Right.
And it was a good pushback because Democrats own health care. That's always where they poll best. It was smart of them to latch on to that. But I think a lot of people are saying, well, wait a minute. First of all, Obamacare is only 7% of the country. So am I really going to be on the hook for whatever it costs to fund that?
Not to mention the illegals getting my tax money to pay for their and Jackie, I'm looking at the president right now. His polling numbers actually have been up. Not much, but by 1 percentage point since the shutdown began. That compares to the shutdown during his first administration, where his poll numbers went down. Now they're going up, and it's pretty obvious all of the successes that he's had, the peace plans, not just the one in the Mideast, but a pending one in Ukraine, the China economic deal. I mean, there's so many things that he's been doing that have held up his numbers. I don't think he's particularly worried about this.
I don't think so at all. And I think that, people look at the president and what the Republicans are doing right now with regard to the shutdown and saying, you're doing what I voted for you to do, which is to fight back against crazy, reckless spending. We talked about the big, beautiful law and how we wanted to see spending be curtailed more, but it was tricky. You were playing politics with a lot of different states that, as we've said, once you give things, it's very hard to take them away. And this particular issue on health care is very important because the big, beautiful bill tried to scale back Medicaid a little bit to make sure that illegal aliens that are not supposed to be on the rolls are not on the rolls, or that there are work requirements for young men, for example, who are sitting in the basement doing nothing and trying to collect from the government. And so they're trying to undo what was done through legislation and hold the president and the Republicans hostage here. The other piece of it, the Obamacare piece, is we can't just keep spending recklessly, to your point, on and on and on. So I see this issue as a huge issue with respect to, where we're going altogether, not just about health care, but it's like to spend or not spend. And at some point, there's not $1.5 trillion that I'm aware of that's just sitting around that will be able to fund this right now.
Yeah, and Brian, then you have Trump's secret weapon, and that's the OMB chief, Russ Vought, who now he's been pushed back by the court saying you can't fire people willy-nilly. We'll see how that plays out in the long run. But in the meantime, he's chipping around the edges. He's commanded the Army Corps of Engineers to pull back on programs, surprise, surprise, in some blue cities in Boston, New York, and elsewhere. So there are opportunities, I think, that the president sees here.
Yep. Time is on the Republican side, right? Here you have the president, right? The president is not shut down. He's still working. Every day, Americans see him working. So they're not saying that, the president has shut down the government. He's working. He's saying, who really shut down the government? And then you've got Speaker Johnson and John Thune out there. Thune putting a vote down basically every day, right? Every day or every other day, Democrats are voting against reopening. And Speaker Johnson every day is up there saying the same thing. We want to open the government. They're winning the messaging. They're winning the visual of the president being active. And I agree with you. They're also winning the argument of these guys can't make a budget. Our government's too big. Let's shrink it down. And I just wonder, like outside of D.C. and, these coastal circles, how much are most Americans really feeling what's going on in D.C. right now? My guess is they're not feeling it as much as the Democrat leadership likes to talk about.
Right.
And they're saying, if we don't feel it, how much of it do we really need?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, Kenny Polcari, another group that's not feeling it, are investors. Look what's happening right now with the Dow, up another 326 points right now.
Right. So the market is not focusing on it. To them, it's just noise. The government shutdown is noise. The market's much more focused on the middle of earnings, which we are now, and we got another great report out of Coca-Cola and a number of other ones. I think we're running at 85% of companies that have reported so far have beaten on both the top and bottom lines. And that suggests, and they're not giving really cautious guidance. I think Coke was the first one I heard that was maybe a little bit nervous. But for the rest of them, they're giving a robust guidance, which just tells you that they're feeling good about the economy, which then leads me to ask, we've got this robust economy with sticky inflation. Why are we going to cut rates again next week? I'm not seeing it. But one way or the other, investors are not at all nervous.
And by the way, because of the tax changes that you were able to deduct some of the charges for building factory or buying equipment back to January 20th,
right.
You're beginning to see stuff that isn't quite online yet. Are companies expecting that to come online in another boom?
Well, I think they're certainly expecting it to come online. The speed at which it's going to happen, I'm not sure yet because it takes a lot to get all that stuff built. But we are on our way to doing it, and that's what the market is telling you. Investors are very, very excited about what's happening.
All right. Well, there's other stuff going on as well. Jackie, you're looking at Coinbase.
Take a look here. Coinbase signing a $375 million deal to buy Echo. That is a separate crypto investment platform that lets users buy both private and public tokens. It's Coinbase's 8th acquisition this year as the company looks to capitalize on President Trump's crypto-friendly policies. The stock is trading just slightly lower there, but wow, look at it this year, 38% higher.
Nice. Do you like Coinbase?
I like Coinbase. I don't own Coinbase. I have a Coinbase account, but I don't own Coinbase myself.
Might you?
I don't know yet. I don't know yet if I'm going to own Coinbase.
Adam Johnson, who's on the show a lot, says he likes Coinbase. If you don't want to play in crypto, but you want to be in the space, Coinbase is a great one.
It's a great way to do it. I own crypto through Coinbase. I just don't own Coinbase.
All right.
Turning now to the war in Ukraine. The Kremlin has rejected President Trump's proposal to freeze the war at the current front lines. Victoria Coates joining me now, a security expert. Victoria, okay, what happens now? Does Zelensky have to give up some more land to get Putin to talk peace?
Well, good to be with you, Stuart. This is, I think, a very bad move on Vladimir Putin's part. President Trump has given him every option to come to the table, to get to a diplomatic resolution. I think freezing the lines to get to a ceasefire was a very reasonable proposal, and we had also a meeting on the table for Secretary Rubio and Minister Lavrov, and that could have made some more progress, too. But for Putin to reject this means he is the one who's on the wrong side of peace. President Trump just brokered that ceasefire in the Middle East that Trey was just reporting on. It is holding against all odds. But Putin is the one who's not coming to the table, who won't get to a deal. So I would look to the president to start to put some more very strong economic pressure on Putin to force him to the table.
You say it would be economic pressure, like forcing Russia's friends and allies not to buy Russian oil. But you don't mean providing those Tomahawk missiles, right? That would be a military option.
Well, I think we would start with the economic option. President Trump is always very careful to keep leverage in his pocket, if you will, so he has additional steps to take short of something cataclysmic. And in this case, the economic card has not been played. Yesterday, Stuart, the European Union announced with great fanfare that they were going to wean themselves off Russian gas by 2028. Yeah. We are looking at the 4th anniversary of this war in a couple of months. They haven't gotten themselves off Russian gas. That's where we have to start, is with our European partners and allies, because this war is in Europe. They have to end this. So that's the perfect place to start.
But they can't just cut off Russian gas just like that. Winter's coming in Europe. If they just cut off Russian gas, where would they buy it from?
It's coming for the 4th time since this war started, and they've taken no steps in 4 years to do something about this. So I think they can import more U.S. gas. That was part of the trade deal with the EU. We are producing record amounts. We also have a glut of Middle East oil on the market. That we have shipments that aren't finding buyers. They can buy that gas and oil. So this is eminently possible for them to do, but they have no sense of urgency because the Biden administration turned a blind eye to it for years. And so I think that's where the president can really turn up the pressure.
Victoria, the Kremlin is saying that Russia is prepared to expand ties with Iran in all areas. That sounds like, to me, it's a bit like desperation for Russia, because Iran is flat on its back and bitterly divided.
Indeed. And this is a very interesting kind of 3-way, maybe 4-way partnership under the direction of China with Russia, Iran, and to some extent North Korea. And they've all kind of banded together into a new version of the axis of evil. And it is a danger to the United States. But at the same time, as you point out, all of these countries have systemic economic problems. It's not like Iran has all that much to offer Russia or vice versa. So I think this is a place where you could maybe do, kill 2 birds with 1 stone, if you will. Maximum pressure on Iran can also be maximum pressure on Russia, both of them hugely dependent on their energy exports. Maybe the president needs a new czar to just spend all their time tracking their shipments and cutting them off.
Maybe so. Victoria Coates, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us, ma'am. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart.
They're also building the Obama Presidential Library. I'm wondering if you've seen.
He needs help.
Have you seen pictures of the architecture? And
yeah, I did. It's not too pretty. No, but it's closed. It's stopped. They ran out of money. I mean, he's building a library / museum. You call it some museum, and usually they call it library and museum. That's the official name. And they're stuck. And he wanted only women and DEI to build it. Well, that's what they got. I built a great building in Chicago, as you know, a big, beautiful building, one of the tallest buildings in the country. And we got it built very quickly, very well. And we used the construction workers of Chicago. They're great workers. They're great construction people. And I suggest that he get them involved. But they're hundreds of millions of dollars over budget, and I think it stopped. I'm reading these terrible stories, but that's the way our country was run under President Obama, too. Nobody knew it.
That was President Trump joining in on the growing consensus in Chicago that President Obama's new center there is a major problem and an eyesore. Costs have more than doubled to $830 million from $330 million. The president is saying that's the way our country was run under President Obama. Look who's here. Let's welcome back to the show Chicago resident, Chicago Red member P. Ray Easley. P. Ray, we're excited to talk to you again. What do you make of this? Because costs for Obama's center to taxpayers like you in Chicago and Illinois are now soaring to $224 million for upgrades around Obama's center. How do you guys feel about all this?
Once again, we're talking about something that isn't fair in the city of Chicago. The Obama Foundation was supposed to create an endowment that was supposed to be funded with $430 million in order to make sure that the taxpayers were not given a bill. Well, friends, the Obama organization has only put $1 million in that endowment, which means that they're $429 million short. And this is how things go in Chicago. You plan things, you tell people how it's going to go, but then you never fulfill what you're supposed to do, and the taxpayers are once again left with the bill. We didn't ask for this at all. Once again, Mellody Hobson and her husband, George Lucas, wanted to build a museum on our lakefront. They were not allowed to do that because you're not supposed to use public lands. They changed the rules for the Obama Foundation, sold them the land for $10, and now we're being stuck with the bill, and we still haven't seen any proof of public good.
For
so
$10?
We'll see how it goes.
Wow.
For $10. They got all of that land.
Senator Ted Cruz says it looks like Star Wars Death Star. Let's take a listen to what your fellow Chicagoans had to say about Obama's costly center. Watch.
What do you think it looks like?
Like a jail, kind of.
Like a jail.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it was a great president, and it's basically ruined all the traffic down this way for 2 years.
What would you call that architecture?
Garbage can, maybe, just a little. It's just a giant great TARDIS, that's all.
Looks like an ATC tower.
ATC tower.
Looks like a big mausoleum.
A big mausoleum.
Yeah.
What do you think? Isn't this supposed to be for Chicago residents? But, you know, people there are saying it's an eyesore. It looks like a giant mausoleum.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't match our Chicago architecture, which we're world renowned for. I think that the former president wanted to create something that was going to be very unique on the South Side that illustrated his presidency. And now we have in America a big rock that contributes nothing to anybody but himself and his ego. That's what we're dealing with here. And I wish that the city of Chicago would have fought back a little harder to put this entity somewhere else where it wouldn't mess up the traffic nor take any of the parkland. Everybody deserved better out of this situation, but once again, the Obamas won.
I mean, Chicago's got a deficit, and now you've got things like the Chicago socialist mayor wants to tax social media platforms. Final word.
Yes. 50 cents a person. That's what they want to charge people here in the city of Chicago. But they voted for, again, Barack Obama to build this center. And now we get another tax bill on top of the tax bill for the illegals,
Wow.
on top of the tax bill for the pensions, on top of the tax bill for everything else.
Got it. P.
Welcome
Ray
to
Easley.
Chicago.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
We'll have you back on. It's good to see you.
All right, with great pleasure, we welcome back to the show Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Mr. Secretary, thank you for doing this. I know you've got a big trip out to Asia. And let me just begin. There's a lot of stock market turbulence, rumors. I don't know how to say that U.S. official and 3 people were briefed by U.S. authorities. The White House is weighing a bunch of export controls on China, software, laptops, jet engines, to retaliate against rare earths. This was a Reuters story. Other news organs have picked it up. I have no idea whether there's any validity to it, and I wondered if you wanted to comment. I know you're meeting with the Chinese very soon.
Yep. So, Larry, good to be back with you. I'm leaving this evening. Jameson Greer's already on his way to Kuala Lumpur. And in Malaysia, on Saturday and Sunday, we're going to be meeting with our Chinese counterpart, the Vice Premier Hu Liefang. And you just talked about some of the potential export controls we may put on, but the Chinese announced on October 8th this wide-ranging export controls on rare earth magnets, just on rare earths, all over the world. This is China versus the globe. It's not just on the U.S. And I can tell you that this licensing regime that they proposed is unworkable and unacceptable. So we are contemplating, if we are not able to negotiate a pause or relief on this regime, how the U.S. and the allies would respond.
So this will be part of your discussions, and then presumably part of the discussions between President Trump and Xi.
Larry, I'm hoping that we can get this ironed out this weekend so that the leaders can enter their talks on a more positive note, because President Trump has great regard for Party Chair Xi. They're in frequent contact, and it would be a shame to waste their first in-person meeting during President Trump's second term, trying to get past some problems rather than moving towards more constructive dialogue between the U.S. and China.
So just to clarify, nothing is set in cement or stone. This is going to be part of the negotiations that you'll be conducting on behalf of the president.
Exactly, Larry. But all options are on the table. I am optimistic. We've had a successful de-escalation, but we're going to have two days of very fulsome talks. This will be the fifth meeting we've had. We've been Geneva, London, Stockholm, Madrid. Now we're moving to Asia, to Kuala Lumpur. There's also the ASEAN conference going on. We'll be traveling with the president to Japan to meet the new prime minister. She is a protege of Prime Minister Abe, who the president was very close to. So I think that they will have a very good relationship. Then we'll be moving on to the APEC conference in Korea, where the president is currently scheduled to do a pull-aside with Xi.
So there's also talk today, Scott, not the first time, sanctions on those who purchase Russian oil, or perhaps other sanctions on Russia itself. Can you shed any light on that?
Larry, as you know, and the world can see, President Trump is the president of peace. He's done peace deals, trade deals, tax deals, and part of the peace deal, the real remaining final conflict in the world, this would be the ninth one that he has found a solution to, would be between Russia and Ukraine. President Putin has not come to the table in an honest and forthright manner, as we'd hoped. There were talks in Alaska. President Trump walked away when he realized that things were not moving forward. There have been behind-the-scenes talk, but I believe that the president is disappointed at the where we are in these talks. So either this evening or first thing tomorrow morning, we are going to be announcing a substantial increase in Russia's sanctions. I'm not going to give you the exact sanctions, but I can tell you that this will be one of the largest sanctions that we have done against the Russian Federation.
So these sanctions would be on the sale of Russian oil, or would this be secondary sanctions on all business with Russia? Can you help us out there?
These are sanctions, not secondary tariffs.
And this would affect China, which is, I think, the largest purchaser of Russian oil?
Larry, I don't want to give away too much, but again, we're hoping to have these out either after the close or first thing in the morning, but these are going to be substantial and powerful, and we are urging our European and G7 allies, plus Canada and Australia, to come along with us.
Well, that was my next question. The president today is meeting with the head of NATO, and they have generally good relations. Will the NATO countries, will the EU come along with the Russian sanctions or Russian tariffs or whatever?
They've implemented their, their own sanctions package. They're on the 19th package, and we'll see whether they join us in these. We've encouraged them to. I've been making phone calls late morning, all afternoon, to discuss it with them. I'll be on the phone later this evening before I leave for Malaysia.
Secretary, why is China selling their Treasury bonds and buying gold? What is that all about? They've done a lot of it this year, but they and some of their BRIC allies have been doing it for years before. Are they trying to stop the dollar from being the world's reserve currency, or how do you read that? Because the gold rally seems to be being driven by these Chinese purchases.
Well, look, Larry, you and I have been around the financial markets to know what a mania looks like, what a momentum looks like. And yes, the Chinese central bank has been adding to their gold reserves. Many emerging market countries have. The U.S. has the largest reserves in the world. So, as gold has gone up, it has helped what we've got in Fort Knox substantially. And, I can't speak to why they're doing it, but the good news is that our Treasury bill auctions have never been so solid, especially with overseas buyers, that as Treasury Secretary, I can see who is coming in. And there was a narrative in the spring after Liberation Day that foreigners were backing off on buying. And I can tell you that in some auctions we've seen record foreign purchases, and we've seen very, very good foreign interest lately.
In general, are you satisfied with the value of the dollar against other currencies?
Larry, as I pointed out before, we had a depreciation in the dollar, and strong dollar policy does not mean the dollar does not have short-term fluctuations up or down. Strong dollar means that we practice the policies and have the policies to keep the dollar strong and the reserve currency. What I observed was that in 2017, the dollar was weak in President Trump's first year, and it bottomed the day that you all got the tax bill done. So in the late December, right before Christmas, if you look at a chart, the dollar bottomed. If you go back and look at this year, the dollar bottomed right around July 4th when we got the one big beautiful bill done.
Yes. Well, I figured, looking at this story, if you're not happy with what China's doing, you'll just fire more of their rogue negotiators. I mean, you fire this poor guy, and who knows, you may go on the warpath and fire some others, Mr. Secretary. We're all very impressed with that.
Larry, I just stick with personnel decisions in my building. I like to point out, when there are problem counterparties, and I think that maybe Chinese leadership saw something they didn't like. I think maybe he wasn't representing their interest in a respectful way, because I can tell you that in our previous 4 meetings, everything has been approached the way the 2 largest economies in the world would do it, with great respect. We know that we are competitors, but we have to treat each other in a certain way.
So let's come home. I mean, the economy looks pretty good. Could be growing as much as 4%. I'm looking at some deflation, energy deflation, gasoline deflation, agriculture, commodity deflation. Budget deficits seem to be coming down. Even spending may be coming down. I mean, I know you're tweeting on this stuff. Things look pretty good at home, huh?
Larry, things look great, and they're good now. I think 2026, 2027 are going to be great years because, as you know, part of what's happening with the tax bill is the president's campaign promises, which he kept, on no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, and deductibility of auto loans for American cars. On the first 3, working Americans have kept their withholding the same. And you might recall, I'm also the IRS commissioner, so I can see what's going on at the IRS. And I can tell you that in the first quarter of the year, we are going to see substantial tax refunds for working Americans. On January 1st, working Americans will reset their withholding levels, and they will have substantial real income increases. So that's a pretty good combination. You get a refund and your weekly, monthly earnings go up. And as you said, we're starting to see this affordability crisis. We've gotten it under control. The first thing to getting it under control was stopping the Biden inflation. Now that we've done that, we are able to, as you pointed out, energy prices are down. I think that housing prices are a lagging indicator, especially in rates. So I think we could see that the CPI numbers start coming down next month, the month after.
Well, I think, under $3 a gallon gasoline nationwide, according to some surveys. Oil itself, wholesale oil, is under $60. I mean, it seems like that's good for business, good for consumer purchasing power, and actually bad for Russia. I'm not going to shed any tears on that. And I think the budget deficit as a share of the economy is probably going to start coming down in a significant way.
Yeah, Larry, contrary to what everyone said, we had for the fiscal year last year, we had a lower deficit than we did the previous fiscal year. And it's as Warren Buffett says, when people ask him, how do you lose weight? You eat less, exercise more. How do you control the budget deficit? You spend less or control spending and grow more. And you're Mr. Growth. So if we can keep the spending flat to down and grow at least a nominal 5%, maybe higher, then our deficit to GDP, it ended the fiscal year with a 5 in front of it, down from the 6.4, 6.5, which was the worst when we weren't in a recession, weren't at war. And I think we could make substantial progress again. And I would hope we could be in the low 5s or something with a 4 in it for next year.
Yeah. Well, promises made, promises kept. Mr. Secretary, thank you for your time. Good luck. Have a safe trip to Asia dealing with China and the others. We appreciate it very much, sir.
Good, Larry. Always good to see you.
All right.
The Senate once again failing to advance the House-passed funding bill that would end the shutdown for the 12th time. The Senate is set to take a key test vote today on a bill to pay military personnel and some federal workers. That measure is expected to fail. Republicans on Capitol Hill are now discussing a plan that would extend current government funding levels through December of 2026. Joining me now is Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. Senator, good morning. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So you voted no on the most recent continuing resolution bill. What specific provisions or omissions in that bill led you to that no vote, sir?
Well, the debate is over what our spending level should be. The Republican plan, if passed, would lead to about a $2 trillion deficit next year. The Democrat plan, if passed, would lead to about a $3 trillion deficit. So really, I'm not for either one of those. The Republican plan continues the Biden spending levels from December of 2024. The great irony is that every Democrat voted for these spending levels last December, and now every Democrat is voting no, even though it's the same spending levels. My opposition is different. My opposition is that I think the debt threatens our national security, threatens our economic security, and I don't think we can keep piling on debt at this rate. We've just turned $38 trillion for the overall U.S. debt, and we have real problems ahead of us with devaluation of our currency, inflation, rising prices. So someone's got to hold the line and just say, we can't keep doing it the same way.
Yeah, and I know that the president has been critical of you being vocal about this. I mean, and you have been described, I mean, you really are a fiscal hawk. You've been very critical of unchecked spending in Washington. But in this particular bill, what failed your standard for fiscal discipline, specifically in this? And what if it was revised or changed? Because we might get there because of the calendar. What would get you to a yes?
It's the level of spending. So, for example, these are the Biden spending levels that are now in the Republican CR. I know it's confusing, but the Republicans adopted the Biden spending levels after being very critical of them in last year's campaign. They then adopted the Biden spending levels. But this year it led to about a $1.8 trillion deficit for the year. The projection is $2.1 trillion at these spending levels. So it'd have to be less. What happened during the pandemic is spending went up 20, 25%. So the curve's going along like this. It jumps up in the pandemic, but we've never gone back to where we were on the curve. So what I would support would be something that has less deficit. So, for example, my penny plan budget that I would propose in its first year might have a $1 trillion deficit, but that would be half of what we're doing now. Then the following year would be $500 billion, the following year $250 billion, and by 5 years you would actually balance the budget. That's something I would support. But I'm not going to support the status quo, because if everybody around here flip-flops and then everybody supports the status quo, then there are no Republicans left who actually believe in balanced budgets. Right now, I'm the only one left in the Senate who's saying, I'm not voting for budgets that have massive deficits.
Okay. Well, you are hosting a lunch today with Senator Gary Peters. So I want to hear what you're expecting. We had Senator Blackburn on earlier. She's plans to stop by. But what are you expecting to get out of this lunch?
Well, we occasionally have bipartisan lunches, and it was actually scheduled before the shutdown. But with the shutdown, it's a good time to sit down at the same table with Democrats and just have conversations. You know, I've been having conversations on the floor with other Democrats, several of the other Democrats, about how we could fix this. And I think there is a way to fix this and a way to move forward. And I think actually there are enough discussions going on that it will end soon, maybe in the next week or two. But this lunch will be a good chance for everybody to break bread together. And I find that they've been very helpful in trying to increase the conversations and possibility for negotiation.
Okay, I want to ask you about that, about the calendar. But for, you know, a lot of these Democrats, though, well, the Democrats are expected to block this bill from Senator Ron Johnson that would pay some federal employees, you know, the Shutdown Fairness Act. That test vote again today, 12:15. Are you a yes or a no on that?
I will vote to pay the workers, because even if you were to adopt my penny plan, I wouldn't cut the workers' pay. That's not how I'm going to save money. I might not add new workers, but I wouldn't immediately cut people's pay. I think that's not the way you would balance a budget. So I am for paying the workers, for paying the soldiers. I will vote that way. I think it's a very difficult and potentially dangerous vote for Democrats. Look, we have a governor's race in Virginia right now. The 3 counties that are adjacent to D.C. have a lot of government workers. And if the Democrats are going to now vote not to pay the workers that are essential, I think that could have devastating consequences. That the governor's race has gotten closer there. The attorney general's got all kinds of problems, the Democrat, for saying he would kill his opponent or his opponent's children. That race is tightening. And then if we have a vote today, and if the Democrats vote not to pay the workers, I could see a lot of government workers either voting Republican or not voting at all because they're disgruntled and unhappy with the Democrats.
You said that you think that the shutdown could end in maybe the next week or two. We had Congressman Michael Rulli on this morning on the program. He's hearing Democrats openly in the hallways and at the club bragging about their role in the shutdown. Some saying they want this to go to Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I don't know. I think one way of trying to move forward, though, is to open parts of it. So if we pay workers, that's about 10 to 15% of the total opening of government. So just by paying workers opens about 10% more. We have several spending bills that have been passed, and why I don't always vote for the final product because of the amount of spending. I usually will vote to get onto the bills so we can at least process them and move forward towards a decision of a spending level. So there's about 6 or 7 of these that we may be able to do in the next week or so. So the Democrats keep it closed. What's going to happen is individual spending bills are going to come forward, and that's actually the way taxpayers should want to see it. Instead of one big, enormous omnibus bill that nobody knows what's in it and is printed in the dead of night, we do it in orderly fashion. There's 12 different appropriation or spending bills. That's what we ought to do it. Some of that's going to happen in the next week or two if the Democrats still keep the government closed, and they'll have to make a decision. They're going to vote against paying the workers, paying the soldiers, and are they going to vote against individual spending bills that they already supported in committee? So there's a lot of problems for them here. That's why I think ultimately they're going to have to allow the spending levels to continue and then negotiate for another day.
Do you have a drop-down date where, you know, like how long? I mean, are you willing to go without a deal? I mean, how long can we tolerate a shutdown, and how long do you think you?
Yeah, I don't.
Do you want better terms?
Right. Yeah. I don't think that's the way I look at it. The way I look at it is when given a chance, I will vote for responsible spending levels. I will vote to pay the workers. That's the first thing that's going to happen. That's going to happen today. There will be a vote today on paying the people who are showing up for work. All the staff, all the people working on the Hill, people working in the agencies that are essential, and most importantly, paying our soldiers who are defending the country. So that's a big vote. And I would suggest if the Democrats vote no on it, that we vote on it every day, because it needs to be emphasized to the American people that paying the people who work here, even for me, the most fiscally conservative member of the Senate, I will vote to pay the workers, because you can't employ people and not pay them.
Well, before you go, and again, going back to your reputation as the fiscal hawk, you know, we had this recent Treasury analysis that found that the U.S. budget deficit actually shrank to $1.78 trillion for fiscal year 2025. That is a decrease of $41 billion from last year. You know, the U.S. government's gross national debt did surpass $38 trillion. I'm sure you did not want to see that. And that's the fastest accumulation of $1 trillion in debt outside of the pandemic, Senator. You know, and you mentioned the six-penny plan, and I'm glad that you brought that up earlier. But there is progress being made. I mean, the President Trump is definitely not continuing the Biden spending plans that were in place.
Actually, we are. The spending levels for Congress that we passed in March are the Biden spending levels. The Republican CR that we're voting on, we've voted on 12 times so far that I voted against, is the Biden spending levels. The projection for these spending levels next year will be $2.1 trillion. Our deficit is about 6% of GDP, and it's a problem. You know, we can't keep running the country this way. So something dramatically has to get better.
Oh, all right. Well, Senator Rand Paul, so glad you joined us this morning, and we really do appreciate your time, sir. We're going to be watching everything today. Thank you.
Will you step down out of this race?
Absolutely not. We have a vote in more than 2 weeks. I have supporters. I have 11 headquarters. I have more money that's been donated to my effort locally with matching funds. So let the people decide who the next mayor is. I would suggest to Andrew Cuomo, he actually get into the streets and start campaigning. He's been missing in action and spending all of his time trying to suggest to people that I drop out. 1,000 times I've said it. I am the Republican candidate. He is an independent candidate. I represent the values of the Republican Party, and I'm in it to win it.
That was New York City mayoral candidate Curtis Sliwa on this program yesterday with Maria confirming he will not drop out of this race. We're just 2 weeks away from Election Day, and a new poll shows without Sliwa, Andrew Cuomo has a chance to beat Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani. The New York Post editorial board writing this: swallow the bitter pill. It burns to write this, but it's time for Curtis Sliwa to face reality and admit that the city's best hope to avoid the disaster of a Zohran Mamdani mayoralty is for him to drop out of the race. My next guest, the chairman and CEO of New York City Grocers, Gristedes and D'Agostino's, John Catsimatidis, who we should say, John, you have now called on Curtis Sliwa to drop out as well. You said this yesterday. Have you spoken to Curtis Sliwa? Have you called him? Have you met with him?
I have not talked to him in the last week or so. We were running a campaign, anybody but Zohran. In other words, we were giving Andrew Cuomo and we were giving Curtis Sliwa equal time to say, do what you have to do. And finally, President Trump has been saying all along that he thinks that Andrew Cuomo has the best shot against Zohran one-on-one. And he made it very clear on Maria's show on a Sunday morning, and we all took, we saw it. Myself and Sid Rosenberg, who loves Curtis, and I love Curtis. I mean, it's not about Curtis. We were on Brian Kilmeade's show at 10 o'clock on Sunday night, and we said, it's time. It's time to push a button. We love him. But one-on-one, and the poll confirmed it on Monday morning, one-on-one, that Cuomo has the best shot against. It's a Democratic town, and you know what I tell people? I tell people that 70% of the voters are Democrats. Well, Zohran is not a Democrat; he's a socialist. And Cuomo has been a Democrat all his life, 65 years, 67 years, whatever it is. His father was a Democrat for 70, 80 years. And the best shot, the Democratic Party has to decide that Zohran is a socialist. He is not a Democrat. And that if you're going to vote Democratic, you have to vote for Cuomo. Curtis, he has the Republican nomination, and it's not about being a Republican, not about being a Republican or a Democrat. You know what it's about? It's about New York City. Right now, New York City is at risk, and we love New York. Everybody in New York loves New York. They got to come out and vote vote. Early voting starts, I believe, on Friday or Saturday.
25th, Saturday.
Saturday. Now, what I tell people, the only other thing we need to pull, and it's up to President Trump, it's up to Homeland Security, is you can't have illegals voting. Yeah, and that is a problem. You can't, you think that Zoran won by himself? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think there was more to that than meets the eye. And, the joke I tell, but it's more reality than a joke. Put a ICE agent at every polling booth. And I think the American people want a fair and square election.
They do, John, but at the same time, what's interesting, so you said that you haven't talked to Curtis in the last week. But prior to that, I mean, you're a Republican. He's on the Republican ticket. Did you ever hint to Curtis? Did you ever try to say maybe it's time to kind of scale back? Or because by the way, before Curtis suspended his radio show, he had one on WABC. I mean, technically, Curtis Lee was boss.
Well,
at WABC Radio.
He's on leave. He's on leave. Some of the stations with fake news around. There's a lot of fake news going around saying that he permanently left, and that was not true. He was on leave. He's on leave. And Curtis, the joke we tell around, he's got a 30-year contract, and he's been there for 30 years, and he's got another 30-year contract. But what people have to realize, it's not about Democrats. It's not about Republicans. It's loving New York and making sure New York stays the way we love it. And, we don't care. 1% of the population pays 48% of the taxes. You want to raise taxes? We go along with it. You know what the key is? Quality of life. That we don't ruin the quality of life. We don't disband the police department. The amount of police officers leaving is tremendous. And criminals, they belong in jail. They don't belong in the subways. They don't belong on the streets of New York. Mentally ill, they deserve to be in hospitals.
But Zoran Mamdani is promising at least $10 billion in freebies, many of which we have said he can't deliver on. I do want to get
there is no $10 billion.
This. But that's if his programs, in particular universal child care, that is at least $7 billion right there. I mean, he can't. Actually, where's that money going to come from? Is some bank going to loan New York City the money to fund all these programs if he makes it through and is elected?
Let me tell you, all New Yorkers, he is lying to you. And he is lying. There is no $10 billion. There is no $7 billion. And the same thing, we tell the joke, Fidel Castro promised to elect his people. Cesar Chavez, Venezuela, whoever that was, promised his people. They're broke. And there is no money. It's all lies.
And the Wall Street Journal, in an op-ed, called his tax promises a, quote, tax hike death spiral because he wants to raise corporate taxes to where New Jersey is. That's 11.5%. We're above 7% right now. That is a gigantic jump. You are among the business community in New York. This is your world. What are they going to do if Mamdani gets elected?
I am not here to talk about taxes because I think that's secondary. I am here that he is going to ruin New York by dismantling the police department. Quality of life. That is the thing. Money, we'll find a way. Money is money. But dismantling the police department, appointing judges. Could you imagine appointing more judges that believe that everybody should be in the streets of New York instead of in jails? I mean, the quality of life, I think that is the most important.
Real quick before you go, what did you make of the fact that if you take out Sliwa, and he told Marie he's not getting out. He was adamant. He was here yesterday in the studio. But if it did come down to a close race like that, what part of the voting bloc in New York City do you think would actually maybe hold their nose, fine, and get behind Cuomo? Is it the Jewish vote? Is it the black vote? You know these sections of the city.
I think the Jewish vote is going to get behind him. He hates Jews. I think the gays are going to get behind him. Don't forget, he hates gays, and I don't understand some of the situations. The Italian vote, he hates the Italians. I mean, the real estate industry, he hates the real estate industry. He hates anybody that lives in the East Side. Or I mean, it's just he has a pattern of hate.
Yeah.
And that's not New York City. We have a pattern of love. We love people.
You are a very important voice. I can't underscore that enough in New York City and in the politics of this city. And after this, we'll have another discussion about where the Republican Party is in this city. John Catsimatidis, always great to see you, sir, my friend. Thank you for being here this morning. So much at stake. All right, we're going to be right back, everybody.
According to a new report from our very own Charlie Gasparino, the U.S. Department of Justice has uncovered evidence suggesting that Democrat politicians have been skewing crime statistics on their own behalf ahead of the midterm elections. Okay, Charlie, what do you got on this?
I have sources in the DOJ. They've been crunching numbers. They found something really interesting. And in all these big all these states that you see the governors now opposing Trump, J.B. Pritzker in Illinois, based on crime stats in Chicago that are going down. Gavin Newsom just put out a tweet about how murders are falling dramatically in, I don't know, San Francisco. I believe it just came out. Go down the line, L.A. What I understand from inside the Trump administration is they've been looking at the police practices in these cities. Now, it'll be interesting if they release these stats, and they may for the midterms. In each of these places that are touting double-digit declines, they've also often found rampant evidence of prosecutors not prosecuting felonies, basically busting down felonies for assault. You know, various forms of burglary, larceny, busting them down to misdemeanors. Thus, you show violent crimes and felonies
they're not happening,
declining dramatically. And if you want an example, I was pointed to the one case of this knife-wielding lunatic, sword-wielding lunatic that stomped on some guy's head in Brooklyn. The guy's name was Nicola Tanzi. He was apparently from everything. He was a model citizen, big in his church. He was just hanging out in the subway. And this guy he
held the door for a guy.
Yeah, held the door for the same guy. This guy came and stomped his head in. If you go back, and killed him, by the way. If you go back, the guy was let off on an assault charge, busted down to a misdemeanor. He was literally just let off in July on that. So times thousands is how you get Gavin Newsom crowing about lower crime rates.
Well, data, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics, right? So you got to get the underlying data right.
Kevin Hassett joining me right now. Kevin, I believe you suggested that the shutdown will be over this week. Well, it's not. At this moment, it's not. So what happened?
Well, the discussion I had earlier in the week on a different show was just this, that many moderate Democrats said that because of the No Kings rally, that they couldn't open the government ahead of that because they'd get too much pressure from the left. And so the hope was that now that that rally was over, that they would come to the table and negotiate something. And the fear, which appears to be being realized, was that they were kind of fibbing about the fact that it was about the No Kings rally, and they're just going to keep it closed for as long as they can bear it. And it looks like that's kind of the path we're on right now, and it's really regrettable.
Yes, I don't see the point, frankly. Kevin, the consumer price inflation report came out today. Prices up exactly 3% over the last 12 months. You happy with that?
Yeah, it was a really good report for a number of reasons. The first is that it went down a little bit from August, 3.1 to 3. It was a little bit below expectation, also about 3.1 to 3. But there were some special factors that drove the prices up, especially on the top line number. There was a big refinery shutdown that made the price of gas go up a lot, and that's going to be a big negative for October because we know gas prices have gone way down. And so our expectation is that inflation is decelerating, and that'll take all the pressure off the Fed to keep on the path that they're on.
Got it. Next one, sir. Trump announced all trade talks with Canada have been called off because of an alleged fake ad that showed Ronald Reagan bad-mouthing tariffs. Okay, the president's angry about this. He immediately just said, no more talks with Canada. But where do we go from here?
Well, I mean, the president, I'm sure, has his reasons. There have been a lot of talks with Canada. I've been involved in some of them. And I think the president, probably more than anything, is frustrated with the progress that he's making with Canada. And sometimes when you're frustrated, a timeout is the right call. And the president's saying no talks with Canada. I would guess that at some point between now and the end of his term, he'll talk to Canada again. But yes, right now, I think there's been frustration with the behavior of the Canadians, the demeanor of the Canadians, the positions of the Canadians. And so it's probably a good time to take a break for a little while.
I think what gets to a lot of people is we've got this tariff turmoil, and we've got a government shutdown now in its 4th week. But the economy doesn't seem to be in bad shape because of it,
right.
And nor does the market. So what do you think is the exact state of the economy right now?
Right. Well, we know that in the second quarter we got almost 4% growth. We know that Atlanta Fed GDP now is almost 4% growth now. I get a lot of private indicators, companies I could call up CEOs to say how you do it and everything. And everybody thinks the economy is just rip-roaring. And I think that the uncertainty over the tariffs is partly an explanation, because what's going on is that people are rushing to onshore production here in the U.S., and it's driving a huge surge in investment in the U.S. If you go to the GDP accounts, the number that you could get, while we could still get numbers, right, would be non-defense capital goods orders and shipments. The orders are booming. The investment that we actually see, the GDP release, it's booming. And so everybody's onshoring production at a high rate, and that's making wages go up a lot too. And so year over year, retail sales are up now about 7%. And so people have money in their pockets and they're spending it and they're getting jobs, and we're expanding our capacity. Industrial production is out at an all-time high. And so everything's looking great. And you kind of wonder, geez, in fact, I would say, you and I have been talking on the show for 20 years. The thing that I would say, this is not speaking necessarily as White House guy, but just as economist who's been looking at it forever, is that the things are so good that the Democrats are just trying to slow down President Trump because he's having so much success.
Looking for failure. It's a fine thing on a Friday morning when the stock market's going up across the board and the president's top economic advisor says things are doing just fine. Kevin Hassett, it was a pleasure. Always is.
It's
Keep
great
smiling.
to be here. Always is.
Thanks.
Welcome back. Well, the United States is set to acquire 1 million barrels of oil to begin to refill the strategic petroleum reserve that Biden depleted. President Trump and the Energy Department taking advantage of lower prices as his administration boosts American energy dominance. Oil prices this morning are back above $61 a barrel, sitting at a level of $61.85. Last week they dropped below 60. Joining me now is Continental Resources founder and chairman Harold Hamm. Harold, it is great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. I know we were going to meet in the Permian Basin. We ended up not meeting there, but we're talking today, and I want to get your take on the president agreeing to buy this oil for the strategic reserve right now.
Well, thank you, Maria, and I'm really sorry I can't be in the Permian Basin with you. There's a lot of leaders gathering in Asia next week, and they've asked me to attend, so I have to go there. But, this is a good start with the president agreeing to, start filling the SPR. Prices are, of course, in kind of the bottom of the barrel. As we say, commodity prices are low. It's certainly the time to buy this cheaper product and refill SPR with it. We won't always have this small overcapacity of oil in the world, production overcapacity to refill this with. So certainly we need to do it now. Less than 18 months, we're going to be down to where that overcapacity of 1% to 2% in the world is gone. And so certainly the timing's good. China has refilled theirs, or refilling it, up to 1.1 billion barrels, and while ours is about 400 million. So we need to refill it. The timing's right. The president gets it on energy and realizes certainly this is the right thing to do.
Well, look, I have to believe that since you agree with this move and you want the administration to buy oil now, you must believe that oil prices are going higher. from here because the president is using this advantage of being able to buy it below $60 a barrel after Joe Biden basically depleted the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Some people say that was all about politics. While I was in the Permian Basin, I got to interview the congressman who represents that region, August Pfluger, and here's what he said about what the Biden administration did to the oil industry. Watch this.
I think the most important thing to tell people about the Permian Basin is that we've never endured a harder cycle than the last 4 years when we had a hostile administration, the Biden administration, that really wanted to kill this industry, that wanted to kill the crown jewel of energy production in the United States.
Why? Because the climate agenda was the dominant theme.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You have a geopolitical tool here that they could have used to, for the betterment of the economy, for their foreign policy needs, and instead they went against it because of the radical climate agenda. I mean, they drained the SPR for political reasons. They taxed natural gas. They magically found a number of endangered species, animals that people have never heard of. They attempted to impose overbearing air quality regulations. They attempted to impose a fracking ban, and they actually banned the export of LNG to our allies and our partners around the world.
Harold, your reaction to what Biden did to the industry versus what President Trump has done with all these executive orders to open up drilling?
Well, Representative Pfluger is exactly right. We started off with the Biden administration. The first thing he said was he's going to stop oil and gas production, and he's going to kill the industry, and that's what he intended to do. And it was a terrible policy, and it certainly didn't work out well for him at all. And so with this administration, it's entirely different. We're getting rid of all these bad regulations that they've imposed on the industry. And Representative Pfluger is exactly right. It was one thing after the other. Everything that they could think of, they came up with. So Biden wanted to kill it. Certainly it didn't help the economy. It didn't help America. It's exactly the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, and you know, Harold, that was a sneak peek from my trip at the Permian Basin, and I'm just back last night from Midland, Texas, and it became clear to me that oil and gas production is our most important weapon when it comes to national security. Here's a quick peek at what we spoke about when I spoke with Chevron CEO and Chairman Mike Wirth. Watch this. So the Permian Basin is that important. It's critical to economic security in America, and that means national security, doesn't it?
I think we've seen in many places in the world, especially recently, whether you're talking gas in Europe or critical minerals with China, energy security and national security are linked. The U.S. is blessed with an abundance of natural resources, and we now have an administration that wants to see the energy industry invest in those resources to make sure that America's energy strength translates into economic strength and competitiveness, and importantly, security.
And of course, Harold, we're going to be bringing everybody my exclusive reporting from the Permian Basin beginning next week. But I want to get your take on energy security is national security, because now we have President Trump putting sanctions on these Russian companies, Harold.
Well, he's got to cut the money off to Russia if he intends to get this war stopped, and he does. I was really glad to bring up national security and energy security. They are linked. They're one and the same. And, you know, some states have shirked their responsibility. All states in the U.S. have an equal responsibility for national security. Yet we see some states like New York and particularly California, Illinois, that come up with some of these silly regulations to stop permitting, stop drilling. You know, if you've got minerals, for instance, in New York, they're not worth anything, and your neighbor in Pennsylvania, they're worth a lot. I mean, yeah, they're shirking their responsibility, so that needs to stop. National security is so important, and energy security is what gives us that national security.
You know, what I'm worried about, though, Harold, and I put this out in my piece next week, which we're going to bring. I mean, you know, President Trump is opening up the path for profitability and growth for the oil companies, but market forces are colliding with that because oil prices are lower. So do you think that the oil companies are going to slow down in terms of investment next year because they're not getting what they were getting for oil, right? I mean, you know, looking at oil at below $60 a barrel, we're back above it, is something to consider when you're thinking about CapEx plans for the oil companies. Meanwhile, you've got the Chinese state oil. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Well, it certainly is. I mean, we have to respond to prices, and as long as you have any ability to oversupply the market, you know, that's going to happen. And certainly the Saudis, you know, OPEC members have the taps wide open right now, and so they're oversupplying the market a little bit, but demand is overtaking that supply, and with about 18 months, that oversupply is going to be gone. And then we need to watch out for some price shocks after that point. Once you exceed demand with supply, that's when those things start happening. So we have to have an energy industry in this country.
Yeah.
Energy independence is so important to us.
Yes, absolutely. Harold, before you go, let me get your take on the new construction at the White House. The White House released a list of donors for President Trump's ballroom renovation. You are on that list. You decided to donate alongside other business leaders and major technology and finance companies. Tell us what you'd like to see in terms of the ballroom renovation and why it was important for you to be a donor.
Well, certainly, you know, we've outgrown the meeting space there at the White House, and I'm very proud to be a donor to see this new facility built. I mean, let's face it, government and, you know, America's grown a whole lot in the last 250 years, and that need to be done, and it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be done right. It's already paid for. So it's a fantastic addition for the American people, you know, as we go forward. You know, it's not for President Trump to, you know, use probably. It's going to be done after he's gone. But, you know, it'll be done right. I'm proud to be one of those members that could help out.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was honored to go to a state dinner during the president's first term, and it was outside. He had a state dinner outside because that was the only place they could do it. They did a beautiful job for the Prime Minister of Australia, but there's not a room to have other world leaders in the White House. So you make a great point. Harold, good to see you. Thank you, sir. Harold Hamm joining us.
It's always good to be with you.
Great to see you, sir. We'll see you soon. Don't miss my exclusive reporting from the Permian Basin. We've got a preview this Sunday on Sunday Morning Futures before the entire segment debuts on Mornings with Maria on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week.